Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm Mark Halpern with Sean and Dan. Welcome to the job fair. It's the morning meeting at night. We're going to talk a little bit about what's in the news just briefly, and then Sean and Dan will give some opening comments about jobs and careers in politics and government. And then we'll take your questions. This is really meant to be kind of an open forum for you all to ask whatever questions you want of these two guys who are well versed in how to do this. So we appreciate you making time. Reminder, we'll all be convening in real life on Tuesday night. If you're in New York City, you can join us at in the West Village, 4 o'clock Eastern time for our special meet and greet, VIP meet and greet. And then at 5 o'clock, the show starts. It's at the Village Underground on West 3rd Street. If you're interested in joining us, you can buy tickets at twoway.tv. We would love to see you there. Not much news today. The two nominees of Donald Trump getting the most attention continue to be Matt Gaetz, with lots of senators privately saying they'll never vote for him. They can't see how he'd be confirmed. And Pete Hegseth, who is a subject of daily investigative pieces in the Washington Post and elsewhere, but also still a lot of discussion about Noam and Kennedy and the fifth one, who I'm always forgetting. Who am I forgetting, Dan?
Kennedy, Bassinet, Tulsi Gabbard.
Tulsi Gabbard, thank you. So we'll see. I still don't have a good feel. Sean, just in general, you think what number of the five do you think will be confirmed?
I mean, I still am going 5 for 5 because I haven't seen anything like the folks that I'm talking to are defaulting to, unless I see something, I'll have to be a yes.
Right.
I mean, you even saw Mark Wade Mullen today saying, "Hey, I don't like Matt, but I'm gonna hear him out."
Yeah. Dan, are you at 5 for 5?
No, I'm 4 of 5. I think either justice or defense, one of those two is going to go down.
Yeah.
And I actually wonder if it's defense, because I sense that Gaetz is like personal to MAGA, and they'll dig in on that one, even though members of Congress hate him.
Yeah.
That's right.
The Democratic leader in this House, Hakeem Jeffries, today said he didn't mind Nancy Pelosi's high profile. We'll see if how she handles that. Does say she's running for election. Again, some people are doubtful she'll go through with that. They think it might be a way to get her daughter the seat. So we'll see. Other than that, President Biden traveling in Latin America authorized the Ukrainians to strike within Russia using American equipment. That is a big change from earlier in the conflict. Wonder how much consultation there was with Team Trump before he made that decision. It's a potentially pretty fateful one over the next few weeks before the change in the American administration. Again, grateful for everybody for joining. If you want to ask a question, please raise your electronic hand. If you're here on the two-way platform, we'll also keep an eye on the very peace, love, and understanding comments that go in the chat on both YouTube and here on two-way. If you want to put a question in the chat, you're welcome to do that as well. So quick comments from the two guys about their sort of overview philosophy about getting work, and then your questions. Sean.
So let me just start. I'll be interested to hear Dan's take on this. But when I came to Washington for the first time in '94, there were a lot of people who took time to meet with me, to help me, and I'm always grateful for that. And I've tried to play it forward. That being said, I had early on an experience that shaped me going forward. I met with a very high, powerful lobbyist who had agreed to help me. When we had lunch, he said, "So tell me, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I'll do anything." And he looked me straight in the eye and he goes, "Well, guess what? There are no jobs for anything. You need to figure out what you want to do so I can help you. I'm not here to be your guidance counselor." And I think that over the last 10 days, I guess it's been, I've tried to remember that I am willing and able to help a lot of folks, but I'm not here to be your guidance counselor and talk about your strengths and weaknesses and where you'd be a good fit. And I think kind of why we wanted to do tonight is, there's a bunch of different options, the campaigns, then the campaign committees, outside groups, there's, official government, there's Capitol Hill. You need to do your legwork. You need to think about, talk to folks that have held jobs. Do you like them? Do you not like them? But I can't, I literally lose my patience with people call and go, I'll do anything. I don't have time to sit here for an hour and judge where you'll fit in and what bureau. Where I can be helpful is, hey, there's 3 jobs. Here are the specific job titles. Here's the office. Here's the opening. Can you help me, get a foot in the door there or something? But you need to do your own legwork and to figure out what you want to do, the job, the title, the office, so that I can be, helpful to somebody. But too often I find folks haven't done the basics, right? So for example, right now, I get a lot of, I'll do anything in the administration. Well, there's 5,000 jobs. I don't know all of them. And I also know what I like and what I don't like, right? I like doing the media stuff. I think working at, I won't name it, but a lot of the departments to me are just north of a prison sentence. And I wouldn't want to go do that. But
you can say FERC. That's okay.
I actually was, one of my old bosses was the chairman of FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission.
Yeah.
He went on to do that after I left the Environment and Public Works Committee. But I always tell people one of the best internships I ever did was where I did this internship and I wrote a paper at the end of college about how much I hated my internship. But what I learned was very valuable about what kind of jobs that I wanted. I didn't want to be doing research in the back of a room and all that kind of stuff. But for example, and I'll end with this, there is a thing called the Plum Book right now. So if you're interested in the Trump administration, you can go online and search it. It has every job that's available, how much it pays, what level it's at, etc. And go through, look at those jobs, figure out which ones you think you're appropriate for, is befitting your skills inside. Like, so if you've never done anything before, going for a Senate confirmable job as a sub cabinet member might not be the best first step. But then present a list and saying, hey, there's 5 or 6 of these jobs that I'm interested in. Is there anything you can do to help me or whatever? But too many times I find people haven't done their own legwork. And so that's kind of, that's my, sort of my opening salvo on all this.
Great. Sean. Dan.
Yeah, so I look for a lot of government and all the groups that operate around it. I always kind of joke, like, a lot of people, you don't major in campaigns, you don't major in lobbying, and so there's always these questions of how do I break in. And so I think, tonight one of the things that we can do is lay out for people, as Sean was just saying, kind of, there are multiple ways to enter Washington or a state capital, whether you like politics or you like government, if there's a certain issue that you care about. And there are so many revolving doors where people go in and out of different areas, and you can move up very quickly. And so part of the challenge is just, how do you get in? How do you get that first job? And then from there, kind of, a little bit of luck and a lot of hard work, off you can go. And my first job was interning for my local congresswoman, Rosa DeLauro from New Haven, Connecticut. And I literally opened physical mail, answered letters that people wrote in about needing help with Social Security, and getting a lot of coffee and always putting the water jugs back, when they were empty at the water cooler. It wasn't glamorous, but sitting in the office, you were witness to a lot of things that happened, and it opened my eyes. I made friends with people, and kind of off it went. So look forward to your questions. Look forward to trying to provide some structure and guidance as best I can.
Real quick, I want to jump on what Dan said before we go to that. Like, number one, I probably did 7 or 8 internships before I got my first job. When I was at the RNC, I probably hired 30 to 50 entry-level people over my tenure there. Almost all of them had been interns. And the reason why is because I would love to see when someone came into the office, did they show up on time? How did they handle themselves? How did they handle small tasks? Because it was sort of a trial period. If you can't do the stuff that Dan was talking about, I'm not going to have you write some other bigger task or paper or something like that. And so you have to be, well, it's, there's enough people that are willing to do that. Go out, volunteer. I used to just say, hey, there's a dinner next week. Do you need anyone to drive people? Do you need people to set up? But and it's also a great way of being like, wow, I thought I'd love campaigns. This is horrible. I don't like this. Or I got to find out that I really enjoy this part of the campaign. My first paid job was a field director. And then got really into like, wow, I love what the press guys do. I think that would be more up my alley. So, taking the time to go volunteer to just say, hey, can I come in and do all the basics? Like that's where people are at some point going to hire someone and say, you know what, you really showed that you can handle the basics. So to me, that's number one, is take the time to volunteer, get involved in the office and show you can handle the small tasks.
Yeah.
Sir, is your name? Go ahead, Dan.
I would say, just to help people, I just put in the chat kind of like 5 different buckets that people tend to ask about. And official is government. And Sean mentioned campaigns, and there's a couple different ways to think about that. The committees are the organization, the political committees help. There's one that helps the Senate candidates, one that helps House candidates, one that helps gubernatorial candidates. There's actually like attorney generals committees, and then think tanks and nonprofits that tend to work on issues, or even in some instances, one issue, and then everyone's favorite, lobbying. So if you have a question and one of those is, piques your interest, we can go from there, and they're all connected.
Sir, is your name pronounced Cade?
Yeah.
Welcome in. Thank you for joining. Tell us where you are and ask your question.
I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Was in DC for 6 or 7 years, left at COVID when they shut down everyone's offices. One of those. But yeah, I wanted to say first, throughout the campaign season, the topic of media bias was discussed on this platform in detail. I thank you guys for shining a light on that. I think one important element, kind of beltway politics, that wasn't addressed is how media bias can be utilized by the political parties or established interests to shape like a negative narrative and stigmatize the prospect of people going to work in the administration. In 2016, that was done to great effect. And I know that they kind of starved the Trump administration of talent. I think that the energy is definitely different now. That probably has a lot to do with the coalition image that Trump built. And I think there's like a wider pool of talented people that may not have typical beltway experience, and that may be what they're looking for, that want to go in. So my question was, for example, I've worked in campaign management in several overseas campaigns. I actually worked against one of your recent two-way guests in a pretty high profile overseas race. And I know many colleagues from those campaigns that would be interested in joining this administration, but they don't really know how to go about that. So what would your advice be to those that want to stand out from other applicants if they don't have typical experience or they don't have high level context in Washington?
Yeah. So let me I think part of it is, like I said, what I've told people is they'll call and say, well, this is and I'll go, great. Go through that plum book, pick those jobs out where you say, this is what I can do, because there's the Presidential Personnel Office, PPO. I don't know. I think they might have 10 people working for it, right? So they're not going to go through your resume and go, you know what, you would be really good at it, is that GS-15 job at Interior. So I'd say they need to put in the legwork and say, these are the 5, 6, 7 jobs that I've realized I could help, and here's why. And it's just a bullet point or two, right? Did this because I did this race in India, therefore, and really learned about the culture. There's this job at the State Department that deals with multinational relationships with India, blah, blah, blah. So it'd be right in my wheelhouse. Okay, good. I got it. You're qualified. You're on our team. You did something for Trump, but that's where, they need to do that legwork and then kind of really bullet, like get it tight. Like, here's what I want to do. Here's the job. And then here's my quick bullet qualifications, right? I did this, and boom, and then get it. The transition should have a portal up at some point if they don't already. And that's where they put it in so that the person is reading it. It's sort of like a cover letter, but really tight, which is so that they're going, okay, yep, I get it. And then on the administration, they're going to want to know, what your if you did something for Trump, if you volunteered, if you donated, that's where you just want to make sure you're noting that. And maybe not just this time, but in 2016, I did this and da 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 da. But that's gonna, you know, to your point about standing out, there are a lot of people that you know, put up signs and did all that kind of stuff, and so you're competing with them too, and you need to explain, hey, look, yeah, I did this stuff. Maybe I made a donation, but it's just showing that I'm on the team.
Got it.
And you know, it's too late for this campaign and this, but if you want to work for a winning campaign, including a presidential, you got to volunteer. You got to do something to support them, because people accuse this administration of being sort of focused on loyalty, but every administration is. So people who sit it out and then on November 6th or whatever say, oh yeah, I'd love to do that, and never lifted a finger, they're just going to have a much harder time. Dan, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I mean, I think, Kate, your first point that it's definitely a different environment, because in 2016, I think a lot of Republicans thought Trump was like a fad and would go away, and then the establishment would take the party back over, and the Congress and everyone would just kind of keep doing what they're doing. And now it's Trump's party. Like, he owns it. I think people are much more open to, you know, working for him. Do you or your friends want to work specifically in the White House, or do they just kind of want to get to DC and kind of be in the action of Trump and Republicans controlling Congress?
Yeah, I think the White House would be the White House, or, you know, stuff like RNC, and in campaigns, you know, there's like a small group of international political consultants that, you know, do that work. They get there for various reasons that are, you know, atypical, and then they don't know how to make the jump back because your resume just reads weird, you know?
Well, because the reason I ask is your first goal of the White House is challenging, to be honest with you, for the reasons John and Mark said. But if they want to go and kind of get back into American politics, back into the Republican umbrella, and let's say maybe they do want to work in the White House in the future, if you go, you know, to the RNC or the RGA or the NRCC, or, you know, et cetera, and if you say, look, I'm willing to go out on one of your campaigns, because one of the biggest problems in DC is most campaign staffers don't want to leave Washington and go live in, you know, Southwest Pennsylvania or North Carolina or Georgia for 13 months in a little apartment and drive around the state. You know, they're startups, you're eating pizza and, you know, bad coffee. But if you do it and you earn the, you know, street cred of the senior people, you know, the second half of Trump's term, if you've been helpful and you've been on the team, and some people start leaving the White House in like very lower level jobs, perhaps you can kind of earn your way, you know, in over the next 2 years. And that's a, you know, it's kind of a long game strategy.
Let me just finish, Kate, real quick. Yeah. I think, you know, you sort of, and I go, you're speaking for other people, but it's like the White House or the RNC, right? Those are two completely separate things. One is official government, one is a campaign arm. But even within each, like I ran communications at the RNC, and then I ran comms in the press shop, right? In the White House. The press shop has 12 positions. Okay, there are 3 wranglers, 3 assistant press secretaries, 3 deputies, and the press secretary. So if someone said to me, I want to work over there, I'd be like, what job? Like, because there's like 3 tiers. Comm shop is pretty close to the same. And so it's like, what department are you looking to work in, and what is your job that you're looking to fill? Because when people say, you know, same thing with the RNC, you've got comms, political division, finance that raises the money. You know, there's an administration piece to this, but that's it. There's not like, so someone would have to say, I want to come in and be the Western regional director in the political division. And here's how my experience translates. But they're not, the RNC in an off year might have 200 employees. You know, like I said, the White House press shop is 12 people. Like these are not big entities. I think people just assume that there's 500 employees, and they're not. So people have to have done their homework and said, this is what I really want to do. I want to make one quick comment on Dodge, because I've seen some stuff in the chat. So Dodge is this Department of Government Efficiency that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are running. It is an outside entity. It is not part of government. Maybe it becomes some sort of like Grace Commission where it's official, but it's in uncharted territory right now. So I've seen some people saying, what about Dodge? And number one, they're telling everyone you'd have to volunteer, so it's not paid. I assume they'll have further details going forward, but that's an air, one of those planes being made in air. Like there's no details to share yet. So I would just say keep an eye on it. And they're not looking to pay people. So if you need money, that's not the government. That's not the job for you.
Thanks, Cade.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay.
Apparently I'm pronouncing Dodge wrong. It's Doge. Doge.
Yeah, just Doge. I was gonna let that slide. All right. Onakepe. How am I doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thanks for
Yeah.
calling me and thanks for
Okay.
this
Thank you.
forum.
Welcome back. We love having you. Go ahead and ask your question, please.
Yeah, I think like I mentioned previously, I'm a physician and I've never really been interested in government, but I got very interested in politics when Trump came on the scene. And so I'm interested in serving in this administration for a couple of reasons. First, because I worked in pharma and I really understand what RFK Jr. is talking about when he talks about some of the issues in the healthcare system between pharma and FDA. And I worked at a pretty high level. So I'm really interested in getting into that, but I have never really been in politics before. So I'm sort of wondering how to get in, what chances. I always had this impression that you had to know people and you have to be lobbying and to get a position. And so I'm not sure, how somebody like myself could get in. I'm very interested, not only because I think I have expertise about some of those relationships between pharma and the FDA, because I was sort of responsible for some of that, and between the pharma and the societies, but also because I really want the administration to be successful this time. I mean, I think it was successful in 2016, but I'm talking about in terms of the backstabbing and the people that try to bring the administration down. So I think it's just important to have people who understand the message this time. So I'm just wondering, what sort of path is available to me, and what is most realistic for me to I think my strengths would probably be in HHS, something in healthcare. That's something I'm also passionate about.
You asked about politics and you've asked about government. Do you want to work in politics or do you want to work in government?
I think government, I mean, I don't know, would there be a role for me in politics? So policy, I'm more interested in policy, actually.
Well, I mean, they're just very different. And
Yeah.
in politics, you can volunteer. Where do you live?
I live in Pennsylvania.
Okay. So depending on where in PA, obviously every area has a local member of Congress. Depending on where you are too, the senators have local district offices. You can volunteer, just on the most basic level and get to know people, and they'll have they'll work with the official office if it's a sitting member of Congress running for re-election. If it's somebody who's thinking of challenging someone, they'll want to start formulating the way they think about issues. And sometimes if you get to know people and you put in the work, and as Sean said, you're reliable, you show up, you do what they ask, they may ask for your expertise to help them think about stuff. If you're thinking of going to the government side and you worked with the FDA in your current capacity and you worked with agencies, I would see, the people that you worked with, talk to them, because they're there. If they're either political appointees or career people, they're two different lanes. I don't know if people know that. In a portion of every agency are career people. You come in through the civil service. The president cannot, although Trump may reform this, fire them, very easily. And then there are the political appointees that with each administration, you get, as Sean said, 5,000, 4,000 jobs to fill.
So when I was I was just going to say, when I was in the Bush administration, I was at in the office of the U.S. Trade Rep, and we had, I think, 12 total political appointees. So you mentioned like FDA and stuff. They might only have 3, 4 political jobs. So, most of these agencies are career civil servant jobs. And that's run through usajobs.gov. If you're looking for a political job, like I said, that's why, to me, part of this is you doing the legwork to identify it. You go through FDA and you say, gosh, I'm really suited to work here, but there's no appointed positions here, or it's, the commissioner, the deputy commissioner, and then 2 congressional affairs people or something. I'm just making that up. But part of it is that that's why I was saying you need to go through the plum book, they call it, and say, okay, gosh, that job, which is a career political appointee, is something that's really suited for me. But you may find that your expertise just doesn't have a political job, and it's unfortunate, but that's just sometimes how it goes, depending on what area you really want to specialize in. Other agencies, I was talking to someone the other day who is in a really weird, small, little obscure agency, but they have 14 political appointees. So you have to figure out what's available, because it may not even be a political job.
Okay, so yes, I'm not really interested in the career path because I'm familiar with what it is at the FDA, and it doesn't have to be in the FDA. I've also worked at some point doing research, so I'm familiar with the NIH. So I'm more looking for a political job. And I guess I did go to look at the Plum Book, and they have these titles, but I really don't know what they do, right? Like under secretary for something, I don't really know what they do day to day, to be honest.
Well, I would say this: anything that is Senate confirmed. I mean, to Mark's point, if you haven't volunteered on the campaign or have a history or something like that, someone from the outside, I would say, has a next to close to 0 chance of getting a Senate confirmed job under secretary, assistant secretary, if you've never been involved.
Oh, okay, those are Senate confirmed. I didn't know that. Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I think though but to Sean's point, for everybody on here, if your goal is to work in a White House, you really need to kind of identify a candidate years out and go all into helping to organize, either raise money. You have to provide a value add and really. And look, sometimes obviously only one candidate can win, right? And so other people on the D side and the R side that run, but you have to build the relationships with people. It is very hard to just raise your hand in late November and say, I think I want to go to the White House. It's just, as Sean said, it's almost impossible. It may happen here and there if you know somebody who has the capital to fill additional jobs. But otherwise, kind of getting into Washington is probably, step one. And then you can try to think about perhaps the 4th year of the Trump White House when people start to leave, because it's ending.
So
thank you. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just one last question. I just want you say you have to get into Washington, and how would one get into Washington?
Well, I mean, that's where we were saying that you can get there through politics, working for a political campaign, somebody who's running for office to serve in Washington. You can work for a think tank, which if you have an expertise in policy in healthcare, there are a lot of think tanks that specialize or have departments that focus on healthcare policy. And you can apply for a job at if you're on the Republican at Heritage, at America. I don't know, Sean, if they're going to keep up. I
think they will.
Yeah. The Trump group that was so active the last few years. I know the Democratic side, very well. But there are different ways that you can kind of apply for jobs that suit your skill set. And then you meet people and you start working with folks that, if you're at a think tank, you work with Capitol Hill, you may work with the White House. Somebody from where you're working then may go serve in government. Like you just have to build the relationships and establish yourself there with the people that are working on it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, just a few news things. Brendan Carr is going to be head of the FCC. He's currently a commissioner. He's a Musk ally, so that's another win for Elon Musk. The New York Times just posted a story on the Treasury Secretary search, which I'm told is accurate, which is new names in the mix. Donald Trump might meet with some new folks this week, so that's pretty wide open. Finally, Kansas City Chiefs are undefeated no more. Got to show you Josh Allen's touchdown real quick. The game's about to end. The Chiefs just intercepted. Bills just intercepted, but you got to see. Play this Josh Allen touchdown, please.
Fakes left, now taken off. Gonna run for it, he got it! And there he goes! Inside the 10, the 5. Oh, the play of the year in the NFL!
All right, now I couldn't see that here, but we played it on YouTube, I think. But it's an incredible touchdown. You'll watch it on your phone. Keith, welcome in. Thanks for joining. Unmute. Tell us where you are. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, so I'm in Connecticut. Actually a first-time Trump voter, and I voted largely because of RFK and Make America Healthy Again. And because of that, I would really love to work for the administration, either in NIH or FDA, trying to fix our food system. But one of the questions I have is, how important is it to live in the DC area prior to applying to, say, an on-site type of job that you might have at, say, NIH or FDA?
I don't think Dan can answer that, just because it's probably the same for Capitol Hill too. But I would say that it's not critical, but I think I would put on that resume, ready to relocate within a week or 5 days. But if you're gonna, I would tell you, I got a job when I was on Capitol Hill once. The interview was at like 7 o'clock at night, and they said, okay, you start tomorrow. And I was like, I can't do that. I have a job. And they were like, okay, well, we need someone to start tomorrow. I don't think it's that extreme, especially in the federal government, because you're going to need to do some kind of clearance in most jobs, some kind of personnel up, whatever. And so my suggestion would be just to note, while I live in Connecticut or Pennsylvania or California, I have already arranged living arrangements and can be there within 72 hours of acceptance or something. Just sends a signal to them that this is not going to be a long drawn out process of, 2 months. Even if that's a little BS on your end, I would just flag so that when they look at the resume and they go, gosh, he's not here, that's not the end of the world, but they do want to know how quick are you going to be able to pull it off.
Gotcha.
Keith, where in Connecticut are you from?
From Brantford.
I grew up in New Haven, so
nice.
I think Sean's right. I would just note that you are willing to move and can move quickly. I would just keep it at that. Because and Sean's right, on Capitol Hill, people will say, I need you in 48 hours. And I know a lot of people who would take the jump and the plunge of signing a lease, going down there, waiting tables or whatever while they're trying to get that job, because it tends to move that fast. But just make note that you're willing to go to Washington.
Sounds good. It sounds a lot more exciting than Connecticut at the moment. So I'd be thrilled to work there.
The pizza is not as good, but it's not bad.
It's true.
Keith, thank you. Appreciate you joining. Thanks so much. Evan, can you unmute? There you go.
How's it going?
Welcome in. We're glad to have you here. What's on your mind? Where are you?
So I'm in UCSB, University of California, Santa Barbara, college student right now. And I was just wondering, I'm very interested in going into the political route. So I was wondering if you had any recommendations or insider tips about pursuing a field in politics.
Dan? Okay, I think Dan might be muted.
Oh, sorry about that, Dan. Go ahead.
I did it because kids are screaming in the background. I don't think you wanted to all hear that.
No.
Yeah, so actually politics is a great, there's lots of ways you can enter. So you are obviously a Democrat or a Republican, right? You'll say which side you want. Do you want to move to Washington, or where are you based?
I'm in California right now. I was born and raised here. Yep. I'm very interested in moving to DC.
Okay, well, so the first thing is, your local member of Congress, like a mayoral race, there's different local races where you could volunteer, right? You literally go down and you can walk into their campaign headquarters and say, I would like to volunteer. And so the first couple weeks or months, you're going to have tedious jobs. I told Mark the other day, my first job on a campaign, this was pre-internet, was putting fundraising invitations into a fax machine one by one that were addressed to, Dan or Sean or Mark. And I spent hours and then I had to call to confirm the fax was received. It's that type of tedious stuff. But you get on the campaign. If you show up every day, you are reliable, you hustle, you're creative, you're willing to work hard, they will make you like a super volunteer, where you're basically, if they had the money, they'd pay you, but they're going to give you responsibility and they're going to assign you a part of the campaign, whether it's either getting votes, raising money, digital, kind of all the various things they do. The second is if you want to go to Washington and live there, the campaign committee, so on the Democratic side, it's called the DCCC, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. They oversee all the House races. And I don't know how many will be in play, this 60, 50, whatever. It's a fairly good sized staff, but what they will do is if you wanted to go run for Congress, Evan, in your district, and you didn't know how to do this, you would fly to DC. The DCCC would hand you a set of resumes for a campaign manager, a communications director, like maybe, and a fundraiser. And you would sit and interview. So the campaign committee's organized staff that is willing to move to a district to do the race. And as I said before, most people want to live in DC. They don't want to go live in these districts on a campaign. So if you're willing to do it, you'll get staffed very quickly out on a campaign. The other is the DSCC, the Senatorial Campaign Committee, and the DGA, which is the Democratic Gubernatorial Group, the Democratic Governors Association. And so if you are willing to leave Washington, you can get on a campaign very fast, like 2 to 3 months. They'll send you out. So don't sign a long lease.
I would just say, look, there's a different, if your goal is to get on a campaign, as Dan said, just remember, you're going to come to Washington to go somewhere else. So, right, what are you trying to do? My personal view is if you wanted a campaign, go find a campaign, around where you live. Yeah. So, in Virginia, I'm in Northern Virginia. There's the 8th Congressional District, the 7th, the 11th. I'd find one of the more, like, what would be more competitive and just say, hey, every day I'm going to show up and volunteer for you. Yeah. And then go through the same process that Dan just said. But I would much rather stay close to where I am than do a kabuki dance of coming to DC or not. And just going in and saying, hey, I'll do whatever you guys need, stuff envelope. And as Dan put it, the person that shows up every day and does something, they're going to say, oh, hey, we're having an event next week. Could you help coordinate it? We know, because they don't have a lot of money, especially early in the campaign. So the more that you're that consistent volunteer, it's like, okay, you start becoming basically a de facto staffer after a couple of weeks, because they're like, hey, he shows up every day. We don't have any money. And eventually, I'd say there's a 50-50 chance you end up getting paid. My personal view is if you live somewhere and there's going to be a race near you, go volunteer on it. Maybe it's not congressional, maybe it's a state Senate race, but get some experience so that the next thing you do is, hey, I was super volunteer, because by the end of that, as Dan said, you're going to probably have a job. And then you can go on to your next campaign saying, oh, I just did this for this state rep race, for this county clerk race, for this mayoral race. But, find something local, check the box so you don't have to, you might even wait tables at night so that you could volunteer during the day. I will just tell you this, for when I moved to DC, I wanted to work on Capitol Hill. And I created an Excel spreadsheet, and I started. So obviously I'm from Rhode Island. We have two reps. One of them at the time was Republican, and that was probably the last time we ever had a Republican. And then what I did is, okay, I went to school in Connecticut. So I started to go, okay, now I can pretend that I have a Connecticut connection. So I would call all the Republican members in Connecticut. I think there was one at the time. I don't think there's any now. And then I was like, well, what else can I claim? And I would try to figure out ways. And then I started to go through alumni books and say, okay, wait, I know that I graduated in whatever, and 4 years ahead of me, Dan Turrentine, he's now working down on Capitol Hill. So I'm going to call him, and I would start to write out like all of this. And the two things I would say to you whenever you're asking in DC are never tell any, don't say, I'm looking for a job, because the answer is we're not hiring. If you say, call up Dan, you say, hey, you're the chief of staff, I'm connected to you. Can I sit with you for 5 minutes and just get your advice? Dan's going to say, absolutely, I've got 5 minutes and I'll give you my advice. Your goal in that meeting is not to ask for a job, but to impress him. Hey, I'm down here. You've done so well. What did you do well, Dan? And Dan's going to want to tell you all of his great advice. He's going to then say, wow, I was really impressed with you. I do know some jobs and I'm willing to make a phone call. But if you call around and say, I'm looking for a job, the simple answer is, I don't have one. If you call around and say, hey, Dan connected us. I'm wondering if you have 5 minutes just to talk to me about what advice you'd give me as I'm down here. Sure, I'll give you 5 minutes. And then I get impressed with you. I go, wait a second, I'll make some phone calls for you. But that's you need to be able to network everything. And then look through your college directories, your now LinkedIn, but where are the connections? And hey, can I meet with you for a second? This is what I'm trying to do. Here's my thing. And that's your sales pitch to get in the door. But everybody's got someone that's connected to something, as far as, so it's 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon all over.
Evan, I lived in my parents' basement in the first few months, and I'm fortunate that I could do that. Like I could afford not to be paid for a few months. But if you can do that or find a way to supplement, it is so easy to break into a campaign. Like, it is the easiest of everything we're going to talk about to break into, because they're desperate for help, right? And then you're just off and running. You'll be able to do it. It's awesome. I love campaign life. It's just as you get older, it gets hard.
Evan, thank you. Appreciate it. Edgar, welcome in. Tell folks where you are. What's on your mind, please?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having this platform, and this call has already been super helpful. I'm in Seattle right now. Just moved here, lived most of my life in Georgia. So I have some experience interning. I interned in my local congressman's office. I studied international relations and then international law, and did an internship at the president of the European Parliament's office while I did my studies. And I wanted to know what would be a way to get a foot in the door in the State Department specifically. I've been working in something totally unrelated to politics for the last 4 years, and kind of want to get back in. Been motivated by this campaign and this administration to get back in there, and kind of want to know what you think about getting a job at the State Department. What would be, a way to get a foot in the door?
So it sounds like, you've got some good international experience. Again, it depends. If you like communications, well, then there's obviously the office of the spokesperson, and then there's like some of the bureaus have comms people in them. There's the Office of Global Engagement, which does communications outreach. Then there's like Radio Free Europe, Radio Free Cuba, a VOA, I think falls under state. But the point is that this goes back to what I was saying earlier. Like, if your specialty is, let's say, Eastern European stuff, go look at those offices that deal with that. Go through the plum book, and find out what opportunities, because maybe there's one, maybe there's 20. And if there's 20, look at the different things and say, that's actually exactly what I want to do. And then you go in and you're surgical about this. I know that there's a job in the East Asian Bureau for whatever, and there's a position for a GS-12 that deals with the following. It's a political appointee, a Schedule C, and that's exactly what I would love to do. And here are my qualifications. Then boom. But you need to. The State Department is a behemoth, and so it goes back to what I said. I don't know the State Department back and forth. We dealt with it a little when I was at USTR. So you need to go through and look at what are those areas that you have expertise in, that you're interested in, and then be very clear about, here are those jobs. and here's my qualifications for them.
Yeah, Edgar, who did you work for in Georgia?
Austin Scott.
Okay, so he's a Republican.
Yes.
Yeah. So do you still have friends there?
It was a while ago.
Okay.
A few people are still there in that office, but there's been some turnover. That was 2018, I think.
Well, because they may be able to, to Sean's point, if you identify something in the State Department that appeals to you, it's better than anything else you may have to call whoever you know there and say, I'm interested in this job. And if you have a decent relationship, they know you, again, you were on time, you were a good employee, like all the things you'd want to see, they may be willing to send your resume over, and you will look at something from Sean, I don't know where he fits in the Trump orbit, if he was on Team Trump or helpful at all, but if he was, obviously Georgia's an important state, like it will get it looked at versus not having anybody, help with that.
Yeah, I think that's right. Just saying, hey, I'm applying for this job. Would you guys be able to, note that I was a good employee or good intern?
Right.
And that Dan's right. It gets it flagged. It doesn't mean that you're going to get a job. It just means that you're going to get a little higher in that stack.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I did have a very specific role in mind in the communications role in the ambassadorship to the European Union. But I was wondering if it would be good to be that specific, a bit, maybe 2%.
Well, but I'm going to guess that that's not a political appointee. So the EU, you usually on those posts get one staffer that the ambassador gets to bring with them. And it's usually the first secretary or the second secretary, but it's not going to be a comms role. Now, maybe I'm wrong on the EU, but you'd have to make sure that job is a Schedule C. Generally speaking, most of the overseas posts are foreign service officers that rotate through those comms jobs.
And it takes a long time to get to a nice European capital with those jobs.
Edgar, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming in. Eric, come on in. Tell folks where you are, what's on your mind after you unmute.
Hey, I'm Eric Kempton. I'm from Minnesota, as you can tell from the hat. Just wanted to add some perspective to the conversation. I know I'm not insulting anyone on this call. I feel like we're hearing a lot of volunteering, which I think is great. I just wanted to add in that I do believe from the younger generation, like your social media and your like digital footprint needs to be huge for the campaign that you try to support. So adding in your specialty to that would be even great. Like the person talking about the health stuff. If you're online preaching that behind the candidate that you want with their policies, I think that would really go. What I like to tell people, I sell into US retail. So Walmart, I always tell vendors that are trying to get into Walmart, don't tell me about, how good your product is. Tell Walmart that you're going to bring customers to them, not the opposite, right? So like Walmart knows they can get customers all the time. You have to tell people, actually, Walmart, I have a following. I'm going to bring it to your stores. And that's how you really do it.
I think that's great, right? If you're really good at something like tech wise, or you have a following, to your point, hey, I have 6,000 followers on Instagram that are largely based in the greater St. Paul area, and you're reaching out to someone in Minnesota, that's a huge bonus to them. Like I agree with you. They're saying, wow, I just picked up. I mean, that's a great influencer type thing. So I think if you can bring something to the fight, and maybe it's social media, maybe it's your followers, maybe it's just a skill. Like I have a couple buddies of mine that are just the most gifted writers. And one of them wrote fundraising, used his talents, never done it before. And he said, gave him a shot at fundraising and crushed it. So if you're really good at something, then that talent is going to float to the top. Whether it's something on computers or writing or what have you, video production. I mean, if you can do video editing, you're golden.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Eric, thank you. Appreciate it. Carter, come on in. Unmute. Tell folks what's on your mind.
Oh, Carter, I think you're muted.
Carter, work on that. Work on that.
All right.
Thomas, go ahead.
Sure. Thanks. Thanks for the call and opportunity, guys. Really appreciate what you guys do. A lot of people have been asking about jobs specifically in this administration. Well, that's an interest of mine too. Could you maybe talk instead about possibly pursuing an actual political career in terms of elected official? I'm here in Wisconsin, and actually I love living in Wisconsin. You guys had mentioned, everyone wants to live in DC. I'm actually love living here. And I've built up connections over the past couple of years with some of our elected officials here, being involved in some political organizations, but how to really build up your credentials and to, when those positions open up, to be one of the people considered for those.
Yeah. Well, first off, good for you. I think it's awesome. Anyone who's willing to have the courage and the drive to run for public office, like I tip my hat to them. I think understanding what offices are in your area, whether it's a congressional, mayoral, city council, like however your local government, state government is organized, and understanding, okay, who holds those offices? Is somebody thinking of retiring? Is somebody thinking of, because you get the domino effect, the mayor is going to run for, if the Senate opens, the local congressperson is going to run for Senate. The mayor wants to run for Congress. The city council person wants to run for mayor. So maybe that city council race is, you kind of want to understand the lay of the land. You want to understand who else is thinking about this. And what is your theory of the case? Why are you a good candidate? Why do you want to have like a marketing plan of who you are and why you're the right fit. And then you want to start, not when it's open, but prior to this, who are the local, like what are the power centers for that office? The local, if it's the Republican Party, if you're in Milwaukee, I'm making that up. On the D side, the unions, the pro-choice community, the environmental groups. You would want to start making relations with all these different power centers within the party, because you're gonna have to win a primary to get to the general. And so I think it's great. I think just what the office is, who are the power centers, what is your theory of the case? You want to get more granular, look on a map, where the votes come from and how, where on that map are you strong and you weak, and your primary opponents could be strong and weak, and it's a chessboard.
So I would tell you, if we were having this conversation 20 years ago, I would tell you, look at the entry-level jobs in elected office, like run for city council or school board, and then think about moving up, right? If you've seen anything over the last decade, it's that people don't care anymore. You've got newbies jumping in for president of the United States after, it used to be, I was going to say Congress, but now it's all the way up. So I think that what Dan is saying is spot on, right? Now, figure out what you want, right? So some people, I've talked to people who've said, I don't want to run for Congress because I don't want to go to Washington. I want to, in your case, stay in Wisconsin. So is it, I really want to be involved in local issues because I care about that kind of stuff. I want to go to Madison and represent my community, as a state rep or a state senator. So figure out the office first. And then, as Dan said, get a view of the landscape. Is it, hey, you just elected a 32-year-old young whippersnapper that's not going anywhere for a while. And then maybe think about something else. Or is it the guy or woman that's in there right now is 97 years old and there's probably going to be a vacancy soon. But the bigger point that Dan was saying is I would start to build out now. Who are my what's my list? Who am I going to hit up for money, right? So it's friends, family first, and then whatever. And then think of those key influencers, people. And I gather lists. So, do you have a list of from your church? Do you have, if you're a member of a club or a neighborhood association, you get all those together? Because this is all about numbers, right? And so the more that you can start off with a ton of data, here are all the people that I have a connection to because I'm a member of this neighborhood association. I'm a member of this club. I'm a member of this church. Boom. There's your immediate jumping off point. And then think about those influencers that Dan was talking about. who are the people in the community that are movers and shakers? Maybe they're neighborhood association presidents, they're other elected officials, they're big business owners or organizers of some sort, right? And then who are the key people in the different, if it's a community, like does somebody lead the Korean community? They're like a player in the Korean community or the Hispanic community, whatever. Start to think about who those players are and get all that down, and then start to go meet with them and say, hey, I'm thinking about running for office. I just wanted to get your opinion, because that way you're building a relationship with them. So when you announce 2 months, 2 years later, the first time you've ever met them isn't, hey, can I have your vote? It's, well, I've known, Pastor so-and-so or Rabbi so-and-so for years because he's been helping me. And and think about those ethnic communities that in some areas are really big, whether it's Greek or, Koreans or whatever. There's usually some kind of ethnic, epicenter, and figure out who those players are. One last thing that I was going to say, this apropos of the last question, someone mentioned, we were talking about those digital strategies, whatever. If you are a language specialist, like you speak something really well, you're fluent in Farsi or Spanish or whatever, and there's a big population in that area, that's going to go a long way too. So, what is it that you can bring to the campaign as a volunteer and say, I can help you with this population, or maybe you are a player in a mega church or a community, something or other that you can bring. But those are all qualities that a campaign is going to love. And by the way, the flip side of this, Thomas, is who are those people that you can now go out and reach out to and say, hey, I know that so-and-so is really a big player in, X in the community, fill in the blank, and start to make a list, and then just say, hey, can I grab a coffee with you? I'm thinking about getting more involved in the community, and I know you're a play to their ego. I know you're a really big influential person. I was wondering if I could just pick your brain because I'm thinking about getting involved, but you're all, just play to their ego. Same thing about the jobs. Don't ask for a job. Say, can I meet with you and get your advice? Everyone loves giving advice.
Yeah, sure. Build the roof when it's sunny out, as he's saying, like make all those friends. The last thing I would just add that I forgot, the moment in time. If you're going to challenge the other party and like the environment becomes great for your party, ride the wave. Like just, even if your spade work is not quite where you want it, because I know a lot of people who have prepped, and when they finally jump, the political environment is horrible for them that year. And it is really, really hard to swim against that tide. So keep your antenna up. If you feel that wave building in Wisconsin to your benefit, jump on it.
Yeah. Timing matters. Thomas, thank you so much. Guys, anybody, you guys want to make any closing statements? Anything you want to say you didn't get to cover?
Give me 1 second. I'll let Dan talk because I'm adding the link for the Plum book into the chat. I put it on my YouTube page and I'm adding it right there. So if you're on the Zoom on the two-way, you can see it. I put it in there. I put it in my YouTube chat as well. But like, everyone I'm seeing some of this stuff about, here's my experience. Great. Go find something in that book that interests you and go from there. And then I said, part of this is doing your homework, network, see who else has held the job, go to your LinkedIn stuff and think about, is there somebody that maybe they don't have the job, but they're a contractor and they interact with the State Department or the Interior Department, and get their perspective. But like, part of this, as I think both of us are getting through, is you got to do your homework too. Whether you want to run for office, whether you want to be a volunteer or get a job, you have to show that you did the legwork, that you researched this, you've gone through your contacts, you've spent the time doing that. So
Dan.
Yeah, I just please be a little judicious with this. I just put my email in here. If for some of you, I see your hands are up, just feel free to email me. And I'm happy to answer, generally speaking. Just Sean's right. Just hustle, try to find what it is. But, everyone gets a hand. Sean got it. I got it, where people gave us advice. And, you'll be able to enter, whether it's government, politics, whatever your passion is, you'll be able to get in. It just takes some hard work and some hustle. But it's a pretty transient city and set of industries, and you'll be able to do it. And I'm sure Sean feels the same way. It's awesome to be in it. It's really, really fun. It's more fun when you win than when you lose, but it's awesome to be in it.
Yeah, I find in competitive fields, if you're good at it, as competitive as it is, you'll do great. I've never seen that many great people don't fail. So if it's the right thing for you, you should stay at it and follow the advice you got tonight. Dan was nice enough to offer to answer questions from those of you with your hands up who didn't get a chance to ask. Sorry we didn't get to everybody. Thanks to Sean and Dan. Reminder, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time, we'll be back for the morning meeting. I'll be back at 6 tomorrow night for two-way tonight. And then Tuesday night, don't forget, if you're in Gotham City and you want to join us, still some tickets left for our two-way morning meeting, rather, after dark at 5 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday night. I'm waiting for the graphic to come up, which is why I'm talking haltingly. 5 p.m. Tuesday night in New York. You can go to twoway.tv for ticket information. Guys, thank you. Thanks everybody for joining.
Thank you, guys.
We'll see you again. 9 a.m. tomorrow morning on the morning meeting.
Thank you.